Hello, listeners. My name is Charles Scott Sr., and we're here talking about real estate and some current events. I'm here with
Charles Scott Jr. How you guys doing? And as I say in every episode, remember, if you don't have time to sit down, this is on demand. Go on Facebook, Twitter, type in Can We Talk Tri-State Realty. We have over 50 episodes, very educational.
We're here today. We're going to talk about some of the things that are happening within your neighborhood and also, I guess, nationally, what's happening within the Federal Reserve, what's happening pertaining to the economy. We are a weekly TV show, which was very informative. We've been on the air for quite a while. As my son said, you can look back and you can look at some of our previous episodes on YouTube. We're on Twitter, Facebook,
TikTok, we're everywhere.
I'm the owner of Tri-State Realty. I'm a broker, and my son's also a broker. And we've been in business for over 38 years, and hopefully some of the information that we give you out here, you can take it and not only use it for yourself, maybe share it with some other people.
Yes. We wanted to explain. As you know, the past couple episodes, we've been talking about this programs. People are coming into the spring market. People are looking for houses right now. And what we have right now, especially for our Connecticut residents, is a grant program. What is it called? Time to Own. Yes, so we're looking for people to, if you need more information about that, give us a call. Don't hesitate. We've gotten several people into houses using this program, haven't we?
You sure have. And one of the things that you want to talk about today is to give you some information as far as your buying opportunities. We get a lot of people, a lot of misinformation. They think that, interest rates are high, and we want to dispel that. Interest rates are up, but they're not as high as they could be, and they're actually looking towards the future. We're looking at interest rates possibly coming down. And even if they stay, where they are right now, it's still a good time to buy, because the prices have actually stabilized in a way. In some cases, it's all based upon territory. Each area is different. But what's going on is that what people don't understand is that it's not like one comes down and the other comes down. If the interest rates come down, then the prices go up.
Yes, like I said, I teach classes also for real estate. I tell my students, I say, hey, don't sit on the sidelines waiting for that interest rate to go down, because when it does, that means everybody, your uncle, your aunt, everybody who's been waiting for these interest rates to lower are going to go into the market. What does that make? More competition for the low inventory we already have.
One of the things I want to talk about today, and affects a lot of people possibly out there, if you're renting. If you're, the first-time home buyers naturally are the renters. And what we get is a tremendous amount of calls, including today, and most of the calls always end up with the same conversation. I always ask people, you're renting now, why are you looking to buy a house? It always boils down to, well, I have a new landlord, and the new landlord is going up on the rents. And I don't think that the apartment is worth this much, or I can't afford to pay that much. So if you're in that situation, and unfortunately I spoke to a young lady today, and she had been in her apartment for quite a long time. It's always the ones that have the cultural shock that have been in the apartments the longest. If you've been comfortable in an apartment for 10, 15, 20 years, 25 years, and now all of a sudden you're going out into the marketplace to look for a house. I want to give you some tips today as to what to look for. It's a totally different environment than going, I would say, even before COVID. It was.
This is totally different. Like I was going to say, I'll date this episode. What is this? This is the first week of March. Rent is due. So we're getting a lot of calls. People are saying, wow, my landlord's going up on this amount. The lease is being renewed at 150, 200, sometimes 30% more than what they were paying before. So then they're saying, scrambling, I need to buy a house. But then they say, well, how do I buy a house? And that's when they come to us.
Exactly. What's happening is that the people that have stayed in their apartment the longest are the ones that are affected the most. And what I used to tell people years ago, if you're paying a low rent, then just imagine yourself as being blessed and take that extra money and put it aside towards buying a house. Because sooner or later the time is going to come where rents are going to go much higher. So what happens right now is that the rents have skyrocketed and gone up a lot. And here's the reason why. The new landlord that's buying up your house is usually got a mortgage that's twice as much as the old landlord. In some cases, a whole lot more, especially if the old landlord has had the house for a long time. You've been there for 15, 20 years. You actually helped him pay for it.
He might have no mortgage at this point.
He might have no mortgage. So he can afford to keep your rent low because he doesn't have a lot of expenses.
Yes.
The taxes naturally have gone up, and the insurance has gone up, the water has gone up, the sewer bill has gone up, and now here comes the new landlord who pays $400,000 for that house versus your landlord having maybe no mortgage.
He probably paid what, $150,000,
if that,
20 years ago.
Maybe $75,000.
Maybe 75.
So your old landlord might have paid $75,000, so he can afford to charge you as little as when you first started out, maybe $800 a month rent. He probably could charge that now and still break even or make a little money.
Yes.
But now the new landlord comes along and he's paying $400,000. So now if you figure that out, his mortgage payment is going to be around $3,000 a month.
Yes.
So he can't afford to charge you $800 a month and have him pay $3,000 a month.
No, that will not work. Remember, he's buying a house at 2024 market rate. He's buying it at, its peak. So he's at this point, he has to recoup his investment. He's buying it for an investment. Even though he may be living on the first floor, you may be on the second floor, he does have to increase that rent in order to break even or even make a profit.
And if you stay there, he's actually losing money.
Yes.
It's not to discourage renters as to, everything going higher, but it's not going to go down to the point of where things are going to go back to where they were. The landlord has to be able to pay the bills. If he doesn't pay, now he loses the house, and the house gets foreclosed on because he's still got to pay the mortgage. And also, like the water bills. There's other hidden expenses when you own a house that a tenant does not understand. There's a water bill. That means that the landlord pays for the water coming into the house. There's a sewer bill. And, some people call it the dirty water. You got to pay the dirty water bill.
You got the two bills there.
So what happens is the city, they recycle the water and they clean the water. And it costs the city money to operate that facility.
Yes.
So therefore, they pass the cost on to the landlord. So the landlord pays both those bills. If the landlord does not pay the water bill or the sewer bill, the city can come up and from the street turn the water off to the house.
Very true.
So now he has no water. And so he has to pay the water bill whether you pay him or not because he got tenants inside there. And so the landlord is responsible for that. The landlord has insurance. Years ago, maybe 10 years ago, you could probably insure a 3-family house for maybe about $1,000.
Per year?
Per year, for the whole year. Now that cost could be $3,000 or more.
How about this? These insurance companies are getting real strict. They might not even insure you. They'll fly a drone over the building and say, oh, you need a new roof, you need new this. And at that point, now the building has no insurance.
Which you made a good point there. Maybe your old landlord needed a new roof on the house and he just never did it. And the insurance company just kept renewing the policy. Because after all, they can't go out and look at thousands and thousands of properties, so they renew the policy. Now he changes companies, or their new landlord gets a new insurance company. The new insurance company is required to go out and inspect all of the new buildings that they insure. So now they don't go out, they send a drone over, or they have satellite images. From the office, they can look immediately and say, oh, hey.
Isn't that something? They can zoom in right on your house.
Before you get off the phone, the insurance company is saying to the new landlord, in order for us to insure this house, you have to replace the roof. And so now the new landlord is saying, oh my God, that's a cost that I did not think about. Now I got to pay all this money, $15,000 for a new roof. Also, another thing that would happen is we had a landlord who called us, who remodeled the house completely, new everything, new roof, new siding, and the insurance. And they went to get the insurance, insurance company said, well, we want you to put in a new sidewalk and new driveway.
How about that?
That wasn't in the plans.
That was not in the plans.
Because they can take the drone and go over and look down and say, hey, you got some cracks in your driveway.
You want to be perfectly up to date and safety. That's what they're concerned about.
They're concerned about somebody walking across there and suing them. So to eliminate that, they tell the landlord, look, you got to put in a new driveway or you're not getting insurance.
And in some cases, they hope that you don't do it. So then they say, that's a risk we don't want to take. We just drop you. They move on to another person.
All of these things are things that the average person, if you're renting, you would not have an idea as to how these things work. So that's why we're telling you how these things work. And this applies to you also if you're buying a house. If you're buying a house, these are some of the things that you have to anticipate. But if you are renting, then these are the things that the landlords are getting hit with.
And also, I was want to bring up, remember that conversation you had with the investors? Remember, when you're coming into an environment to buy a house, remember, some of these houses are going to be older. You got to calculate that into your buying purchase. People from New York, they were looking for a house, and they were saying, this is our budget. But all the houses we're looking at seem to be very old and falling apart, because you realize some of these houses are 100 years old. And when you come into the market, you want to make sure you gauge for that also.
Put aside money.
Yes.
Be able to put aside money for repairs. If you're buying an average multifamily or there's a big demand now. Everybody wants a two or three
family house.
Why? Because they on the piece of paper they write down, okay, my mortgage is $3,000. I'm going to charge $2,000 in rent, and I'm only going to have to pay $1,000 out of my pocket. That sounds good on paper.
Oh, great on paper.
But you got to plan for things happening. Maybe the boiler might go. Maybe the hot water tank might go.
Yes.
Maybe the taxes might go up.
Hey, well, if that tenant doesn't pay the rent, the paper said they weren't going to pay it.
If the tenant that you have there doesn't pay the rent. So now that $1,000 that you had put aside becomes $3,000, $3,500.
Yes.
I'm not saying to discourage you from buying a house, but I'm just letting you know that there's things that you have to consider.
Yes.
And with a multifamily, also with a multifamily, I find, and I always encourage people, are they multifamily material? In other words, are you a landlord? Do you know what it takes to be a landlord? Because that's what you're.
A psychiatrist, you got to be a negotiator.
You're managing other people's lives, and you have to be able to take care of the property, and you have to be able to have people that on call. Something happens, emergency. When you were a tenant and you call the landlord, if a toilet gets clogged up, if pipe breaks, the hot water tank breaks, you have no heat. So when you become the owner of the house, you're it. You're that person that you used to call.
How about that? You are the landlord. If that person's parking, blocking the other tenant, they're fighting, they have to call you. You have to make the rules, who can park here, who can park that. You're that negotiator. You're that person. Some people think it's passive income. It is passive, but it does require some work also.
And the income that you make, you have to keep good records, because it shows that you're making this money. You have to have a person do your taxes to make sure you list all your expenses. You have to keep good records. You have to keep receipts. So all of these things you have to take into consideration when you're buying a house. Now, if you're a first-time home buyer, one of the obstacles we find mostly is coming up with the down payment and the closing costs.
Yes.
There is the program that we mentioned at the beginning of the program called Time to Own.
Time to Own. That is a program that has been released in Connecticut. Remember, it's for Connecticut residents. It's been out for about almost 2 years now. And it's real money. It's real grant money. We have gotten several people into houses, and like I said before, give us a call and we can explain everything in detail to you.
The money, it's not money that's going to be there forever.
No.
We just recently checked, what was it,
26 million there. It sounds like a lot of money, but like I said, it does go pretty quickly.
And you can get either $25,000, up to $25,000, or up to $50,000 to help you buy a house.
Yes.
That helps you with the down payment, and it helps you pay the attorney's fees, the appraisal, the inspection, the insurance. Those are called closing
Yeah,
costs.
people don't realize that when you go to buy a house, it's not just the down payment. Remember, when you're buying a house, because like I said, if you give us a call, you're building a team. You got your loan officer, you got your lawyer, you got your realtor, and you have closing costs that come with that, including with your down payment.
So there's costs that are involved. Now, if you have been renting for 20 years, or in most cases, people have been renting a lot longer than 20 years. If you're in your 40s and 50s and you were renting since you were in your 20s, you've been renting for 30, 40 years.
Yes.
And it's a time to, right now, people are forced into buying their own home or continue renting. You got two choices or three choices. Either you're homeless or you're renting, or either you're buying. You got to stay food, clothing, and shelter.
Yes.
You got to eat, in other words, and you got to have something to put on your back when you walk outside.
You got to
and
have
you
a
need
shelter.
That's where the shelter comes in.
Very true.
And there's a problem right now with homelessness, yes, because a lot of people cannot find shelter because of the things that have happened in their lives, or whether it be money, maybe it be emotional or whatever. But now you have the problem where you need some type of shelter, don't you? You need shelter. You need an address to just get a job.
How about that? Very true.
Employer says, well, where do you live? You can't say, I don't...
You can't say I'm couch floating from this house. You need a steady address.
Makes it difficult.
Yes.
So what we're saying is that start preparing for the future. Start preparing for things that are going to happen in your life, unforeseen occurrences that are going to happen. Try to put a strategy together of how can you benefit. Maybe it means joining up with other people.
Yes, we see that a lot. We see mother, daughter, father, son. People are buying houses together. Maybe it's an uncle and a nephew, and they're coming together, realizing, hey, 2 incomes is better than 1, especially in this market that we're dealing with the low inventory. They have an advantage over people who are just going in this solo.
The strategy is to try and work together. Work together so that you can pool your resources, pool your money, be able to buy that and put something together. Years ago, when we talk about food, clothing, and shelter, years ago when the villages, the shelter was the village people all got together to help each
way
other.
Back.
But I'm saying it goes
Yes.
back to the basics, Back in the old days when people didn't sell houses, they all help each other build a house and have a common area where
about that?
everybody would live.
That's true.
It's a matter of joining together. You didn't leave home and go up the street and rent yourself an apartment back in the old days and have another apartment over here. You go up to that family, they kick you out and say, hey, this is our village. You go down to your own village.
Exactly, very true.
So now when you're talking about apartments, if you've got 3 or 4 siblings, join together and buy a house. When you talk about apartments being expensive, let's say an apartment rents $1,000, and you say, oh, that's expensive. Well, if you got 2 or 3 brothers and sisters, and you're all renting separate homes, to me, that's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month. To me, that's expensive. Look at all that wasted money.
Exactly.
Like someone said years ago, can't we all just get along? People need to get along. They need to join together. They need to pool their resources, share their money, and buy a 2-family house.
I heard someone say, I was at a home seminar the other day, and I heard someone said the first house is always the hardest. Once you get that first house out the way, you got to remember, you've gone through the process now. You say, oh, that's what I have to do. And remember, with you owning that first property, you're building equity that you can tap into to get you the down payment for the next house. Maybe you and an uncle or nephew or aunt, they get together, they buy a duplex, a couple years. Remember, people think that the 30-year mortgage is 30 years. Most people spend 7 years in the house. A couple years later go by, you refinance that, get into another house. At that point, you're building a portfolio.
One other thing today I want to mention is I talk about on these programs things that happen every week and things that I see occurring weekly and then monthly and then on a yearly basis. A lot of people used to come and talk to me in the past, and they'd say, well, the rents are expensive let's give you the scenario. These people coming in from New York, they buying everything and the rents are going up. Well, what happens is the people coming in that come in from New York, and if I'm addressing people from New York, when they come into Connecticut, sometimes they can't afford certain areas themselves. When they come in, the first thing they get hit with is basically around Greenwich.
Yeah,
in Greenwich, their homes are selling for $1 million or more.
Beachfront property.
So, that's quite a bit for a person even coming in from New York. And now the next used to be Stamford. Stamford used to be affordable. I remember going way back 10, 15 years ago. Stamford, you had a lot of apartment buildings. A lot of people lived in Stamford. It was hustling and bustling. People would, live and work in New York. But then Stamford started getting developed, and now look at Stamford. Now the other thing, look at Norwalk.
I was going to say, same thing with Norwalk. Norwalk used to be very low rents back in the day, but now I think Norwalk is some of the highest rents I've seen out there for apartment.
Norwalk and Stamford.
Very comparable to New York prices.
Norwalk and Stamford, the rents are high, the high rises are going up. People that live in Norwalk and Stamford are coming to Bridgeport, and they say in Bridgeport, it's a little bit more affordable.
They say it's affordable.
And then they say now in Bridgeport, the rents everything is expensive in Bridgeport. So people in Bridgeport, I spoke to someone today and they said, well, what about outside? Well, the problem is that when you're leaving even outside of Bridgeport,
it's a little bit more expensive outside.
In some cases, it gets more.
Go to Stratford, Sheldon.
Stratford, well, that's up there. West Haven, and then you go into North Haven, West Haven,
East Haven.
Now you leave out and you go into Trumbull. You go into, and the Valley used to be,
that used to be the
affordable.
secret of Connecticut.
The Valley was like the untapped jewel. People like, the Valley, where's that at?
Derby.
Okay. Then it caught fire. People said, okay, I don't mind moving to Ansonia, Seymour, Derby.
People don't realize, I can live in Ansonia, jump on Route 8. I can still make it to the city 90 minutes, still work at my job, then still come home to my very large house in Ansonia, comparable to Greenwich.
However, here's the catch. Supply and demand.
Yes.
If you're living in a city like Bridgeport, you might have thousands of multifamilies.
Thousands, literally.
That doesn't mean there's a lot of rentals, but at least thousands of multifamilies. So now you get outside of the Bridgeport, and for many people that, people listen to this program that we're on right now all over the world, New York City, Manhattan, New Jersey. So the people are listening to us, and we're giving them sort of a rundown as to what to expect when they come into Connecticut. So when you leave outside of Bridgeport, now you hit the Valley. Well, the Valley prices are high not because of the scenario I gave you in the past, but because of supply and demand.
Very true.
When you go into Bridgeport, you might have maybe on a given day, maybe 60 or 70 apartments in the multiple listings that are available. Now you go into Derby, you might have 2.
We'll say 2 or sometimes 2. None.
Maybe
because
0.
The inventory is so strict out there. And also, there's less multifamilies, a lot more. It's called the Valley for a reason. There's a lot more hills out there compared to Bridgeport. It's mostly
less
flat.
multifamilies.
A lot less multifamilies, a lot less houses in general. And some of those houses have septic tanks because they're so far away from the main sewer line. So it's a different environment. But the thing is, what we were saying is those prices used to be low, but they're creeping up now because
those
people from Bridgeport are being pushed to there.
You might find in Seymour maybe 3 apartments for rent. And in Ansonia, you might find 4 or 5. So where you might find 60 or 70 in the inner city, you go outside the inner city in the suburbs, or not even the suburbs, like in the Valley, each city may only have about 3 or 4 rents. So because there's such low supply, the price shoots up. I'm a landlord, and I know I got 25 people coming to look at my apartment, and I only got the one apartment that's in the. I'm not going to go low on my price.
How about that?
So now those areas have gone up. So the closest now you have is Naugatuck.
Yes.
Same situation. They have very few rentals. Maybe Naugatuck's got maybe 5 apartments for rent. Now we're talking thousands of people looking, hundreds of people looking, with only 5 apartments available.
And then what happens is, it's not really a bidding war. What happens is people come into these apartments, and one of their strategies is, especially if they're from New York, hey, I'll pay the whole year's rent. I'll pay half the year's rent. The landlord says, I don't think a landlord can resist that.
and now you hit Waterbury. Waterbury is sort of comparable to Bridgeport. Waterbury, now all of a sudden you got more multifamilies.
Yes.
Waterbury, the majority of the inner city is a lot of 2 families and 3 families. And so for years, Waterbury was a hidden jewel where the rents were very low.
Very low.
And a lot of people would say, well, I don't want to go that far. So that would keep the Waterbury rents low because they didn't have the demand.
Exactly.
But now what has happened is even the people that buy the multifamilies, they have gravitated into Waterbury. And you have an explosion of property values in the Waterbury area where the prices of the average multifamily that used to sell 175.
I'm about to say 175.
175, 180.
Going for
300, 350.
400 plus now.
So now it's caught fire in the Waterbury area, which happened in the Bridgeport area where the people are the investors and or even not just the investors, people that just want to buy.
People that just need shelter.
Hey, and they also realize, hey, you know, it's only a 25-minute ride.
Yes.
It's only 25 minutes from Bridgeport to Waterbury. And so, and the difference is a big, huge difference in the price. But now what's happening is the price is starting to go higher in the Waterbury area, so that, and the rents used to be, I mean, Waterbury used to be able to get a rent for $600.
$600 for 2-bedroom. I remember that when I first started out 15 years ago. I'm like, oh, that's a good price, but
$600.
$600 will get you a bedroom now in Waterbury. So that's
well, not even a bedroom.
Not even a bedroom.
No, for a now in Waterbury, that 2-bedroom apartment is costing you $1,200.
Yeah, so I think basically what we're saying is be prepared for change because change is inevitable.
And no matter where you go, it's like it's like pouring water into what do you call it? A valley. It's filling up.
Oh, it's filling
the
up.
cracks are all filling up. The rents are going higher. Everything is starting to go up, and so you've got to just make do with what you have. The governor of the state of Connecticut has allotted a lot of money for housing.
Yes.
And a lot of money for building and a lot of money for purchasing. That's why we keep harping on that program, Time to Own.
Because like I said, it's grant money, which means, like I said, if you want the details, you call us. But if you stay in a house for 10 years, they forgive the money.
Right. So give us a call about that. The other thing we want to mention before we sign off is that if you're in trouble out there and you have a mortgage, give us a call because, you know, if you're in foreclosure or if you know someone that's in the process of losing their home, give us a call so that we can come out and talk to them because there are options that you have within the court system